Hello, this thing happened to me a few months ago. I just need to share it with somebody. It all started at my friend's party, who is an artist who rented out a loft in the industrial part of town. If you could picture what the place looked like in Detroit back in sometime around the 1920s, that's what the area looks like. A bunch of old turn of the century factories crammed into 10 blocks. Most of them were abandoned. So I partied with a little too hard one night and decided to crash at the couch at the loft. I woke up around 4 a.m. The sun wasn't even out yet, but you could still make out the faints cut by the dim blue light. I went to the bathroom and carefully tiptoeing around the people that who passed out on the floor, as if I was taking a dump. But I tiptoed back and then went out of the bathroom window and saw a panorama deserted and urban decay. I remember how the place was like this. It was dark, devoid of life, and the tragedy of serene. So I went back on the couch and tried to fall asleep. However, around after 45 minutes of staring into the ceiling, I decided I did not want to be there any longer, so I swallowed my pride and decided to wake up my girlfriend up and bring her for a ride. Since being and walking around the vacant streets at this time was not an option, being an awesome girlfriend that she was totally cool with it, and told me that she would be there about a half an hour, that she would give me a call when she was outside. My phone died 10 minutes later, so I decided I would sit by the window and watch her car, and I sat there a while. My eyes were starting to get heavy. I began to doze off. A crashing noise outside woke me up, and it wasn't loud. It was just loud enough to make me snap into reality. I looked out of the window. I scanned the area and saw nothing. Across the street from the loft near the mountain was a garbage bags, and one of them enormous dumpsters. I saw a computer and a monitor smashed against the floor that hadn't been there before. When I saw my girlfriend arrived and I went downstairs to greet her, just as I was about to get in the car, I remembered an old friend of mine who had blown out his old power supply. I decided to walk over to the dumpster to see what I could salvage, and the monitor was worthless, but the tower seemed to have suffered almost to no damage. So I put it in the trunk and drove off. After about a week had passed, and I completely forgot about the tower until my girlfriend called to let me know that she was still in the trunk and wanted it out. That night I brought it home. But before I took it apart, I decided to hook up to my monitor to see if it still ran. And to my surprise, it did. It ran through Windows XP and it looked like it had been wiped clean. So I decided to search words like boobs and tramps, and in hopes of finding something secret stash of weird deviant porn and other various owners that forgot about it. Morbid curiosity, I guess. I searched it up and found out for the files. Then I found nothing. I searched for movies, and one file came up. It was a .avi inside the folder entitled Barbie, hidden in the Windows/System 32 dictionary. So I played it, and this is where it got disturbing. The movie was about an hour long, so it was about when made up to be a raw footage. Now, the footage was of the room sitting on the chair against the wall with the backdrop. I skipped it through most of the movie, and it was all continuous shot-outs. Then I decided to sift through the footage to find out what I was actually talking about. 15 seconds into the footage, and the audio goes completely bad, and her voice was drowned in harsh, static background noise. I couldn't make out a thing. So I imported a footage into the Final Cut to try to mess with the levels to isolate her voice, and it helped a little. But I still couldn't hear what she was saying, though. I was intrigued, however, and I began playing the reality of paying attention to her face and the body language, as it seems like she's been asked a kind of questions, because she stops in time to listen and then continues talking. After about 15 minutes into the footage, her face began to redeem and contort as its questions were bothering her, but she continues to answer them anyway. Shortly after, she begins to cry, her sobs hysterically for the duration of the film. One of the words I could lip read was skin, and she repeats the word so many times throughout the footage, and at one point she even pulls the skin and her mouth's words. She seemed to be unhappy with her skin. There was so much more I could get off my chest, but it was getting late and I can't go on. I will share with the rest tomorrow. God save my soul. I kept on building and building, and about 40 minutes she was crying so hard that she could barely look at the camera. She then stops and points at the camera. At the rest of the footage was just her crying with her head down. Oddly enough, she doesn't want to get up or move, and the screen just fades to black. I was dumbfounded. I played the whole thing many times that night, trying to find inflections and nuisance of her movements that would reveal anything else of what was going on, but I was dissatisfied. I wanted to know more. That's when I noticed that about 10 more minutes into the left of the timeline on the screen went to black, and about 2 minutes there was more footage. The footage was extremely shaky and almost unwatchable. Despite a few two pair of legs walking around the train tracks. My guess is that the camera was accidentally left on its side, being carried by somewhere. The person in this footage on the train tracks walks for about 6 minutes, then turns into the footage and walks what seemed to be look like a flattened piece of plywood. The person continues to makeshift plywood roads until the movie clip ends. Now my heart started beating with excitement because of the train tracks were a few miles away. That looked like similar to the one in the video. I had to check this out. I called up my friend Izra, and he's about maybe 6'4", 250 pounds with mostly muscle. I convinced him to go on a little adventure with me. I'm a bit of a pushover myself, but I was so into wandering into the woods, looking for God knows what. Extra muscle couldn't hurt. This was the whole idea of investigating the video, so excited that I couldn't fall asleep. The next morning on the sunny day on Saturday, I took my flashlight, my camera, and my 7-inch cab bar with me with Maddle back to the finish, and serrated edge to pick up Ezra. When I got to his house, he wasn't even awake, so I woke him up and he pretty much told me to F off. I was already packed and already mentally prepared for myself to do so. I decided to go through with him without him. I parked my car at the train station, took my stuff, and hopped into the tracks. After waiting for about 2 hours, I saw a broken piece of plywood on my knees that I almost buckled with excitement. I searched the nearby foliage, and then there was a small plywood trail leading into the forest. I walked slowly around the forest trail, paying close attention to everything. I would stop occasionally, kneel down, and listen to anything for anyone. But it was so quiet. This was one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever done. I didn't know what to expect at the end of this trail. The dents of the tree line just gave it away into the island of the grassy field. Then that's when I saw it. The house being consumed what seemed to be the forest, and from the looks of it, no one had lived there for about 20 or maybe 30 years. I got my camera and snapped a few pics of a few yards away from the house, and there was a tool shed that was sit by the rusty sheet metal. I then stood there what seemed to be in the trees for a while, absorbing everything. I didn't want to go into the open field, and I had this bad feeling that something would see me. Then it took me a while to muster the courage to stand up to my house, and the door was partly opened. I pushed it open with my flashlight and revealed the inside was very well lit. I used my flashlight on the way, and then my camera took a few pics. There was no furniture, the floor was riddled with bricks and wood and rubble, and some of the walls had huge holes in them. Then I went further into exploring, and I saw some things I didn't pay much attention to them at that moment, but now that I think of them in the hindsight, they were greatly disturbing to me. The first thing that seemed a little odd was the doors in the first room. I presumed it led to the basement and what seemed to be very little to be new in the house. It was so that only the door and the house was unlocked, and so I made my way to the second floor. I saw some chairs and a fold-out table that seemed to be a little new to be there, but what disturbed me most was for some reason was in the bathroom. The dust on the mirror had been wiped away in the bathtub, and I saw clear plastic tarp that had been water droplets from, and then I presumed it was I washed it clean. That's when I heard something moan but really loud. That's when I jumped out of the second-story window and ran back to the tracks. Halfway there, I began realizing the moaning was most likely from the water pipe expanding or contracting, and at that moment of the relief and the horror was when I felt the wonder the water would be running on an abandoned house in the middle of the woods. There's been little to more than 2 months since this happened, and I have not gone back there for a while, nor do I plan to. And that, my little pretties, was Barbie.AVI, a creepypasta. My final thoughts on the story? Well, I could definitely say this was actually a classic creepypasta that's been on the Creepypasta Wiki for a while, and I'm gonna sit here and say right now that I've been wanting to get to this story again for, well, a really long time. Like, I know it's been quite a while since I last sat there and touched this story. I think the last time I touched this story was back in 2019 or 2020. I can't even remember, but before my computer crashed, I did this story back in 2019, and it just wasn't really that great, to be honest. I'm just saying that right now. It just wasn't that great in the narration video I did, but I could definitely say I have seen a lot of other people sitting there and narrating the story. Like, I've seen some people sitting there and narrating the story, a couple of years ago, and I wasn't really bothered by the narrations of it. Like, this is like the classic creepypastas that I've seen that had, time and effort, and, it wasn't, completely all over the place or anything like that. So I could definitely say that the story was actually really interesting and well made. So I definitely have to say this was actually a really good creepypasta, as I remembered seeing like a bunch of, narrations of the story, and I've been wanting to sit there and, narrate this for quite a while. So, what did I actually think of this? Well, this story was actually very believable and really well made. It was really disturbing too. I could definitely say that it was really, really, really disturbing. So, there were parts of it that was pretty disturbing in the story, so I could definitely say that this story actually had pretty good, well made in the concept. So I definitely have to say, I really do like how this story went out. It was just flat out amazing, and it's just really well done. So I'm definitely gonna say, when I first saw this on the Creepypasta Wiki, I actually sat there and narrated it because it was really well done. Like, I don't know why I've seen some people saying, "Oh, I don't like this story because of this" or something. Like, it's kind of funny how I've seen, some people talk about, how this story just wasn't good or anything like that. But with that being said, I'm just gonna sit there and, be completely and utterly honest with it all. This story was actually a pretty it was just pretty amazing. I'm definitely going to say that now. There was like a lot of time and effort when it came to this story, and I actually remembered sitting there and, seeing this story. This is a really good story. I'm definitely, getting out of my way and saying that because I remember there was a lot of great concept with the story. I remembered the grammar of this is really good. I'm definitely have to say, and there's even like a few videos provided for Barbie.AVI. It's on YouTube too. There's only like part 1 and 2 and 4, but there are no part 3. So this is actually a pretty interesting pasta. And I could definitely say it was a really popular creepypasta at the time. So I definitely have to say that this story was actually really well made and detailed. And I definitely like the concept of this girl, was not happy with her skin. She wanted to be, have her skin transplant or something kind of like that. So I definitely have to say this was actually very believable. Like, it was actually pretty well made. And funny enough, I have seen some other people, sitting there and narrating the story, and they actually said that they were pretty surprised to see this story. So I'm actually not gonna lie. I've seen this story, on multiple channels. I think I have seen it on Chris Papasta's channel at first, and to be completely honest, I actually really liked how this story went out. So I definitely have to say it was a pretty interesting concept with the whole story in that. So I definitely have to say I really do like how this story went out. It was pretty well made in detail and really awesome. So alright. I think that's probably all I can say. Now, I don't know who the original author is because it doesn't state it, so I'm just going to leave it as anonymous for a while. But if I do find out who the original author is, I'll be sure to make sure to give him or her proper credit because he or she did a pretty good job. And I definitely have to say, the girl in this pic could be maybe the possible person, who was in that house. Like, it's possible that she could have been the owner of this house, like the abandoned house that had basically was like around banded like 30 or 20 years ago. It is quite possible it could have been maybe the previous owner who, didn't like her skin in that. So that's probably just my theory, but if you want to come up with your own theories, let me know in the comments below because I would really like to hear your thoughts and opinions. Okay. Yeah, and I'm gonna be wrapping up this review too because this is actually pretty believable, well made. This was actually a really good classic creepypasta. It was at least better than the other ones I've seen. I'm not saying all of them sucked. No, I'm not sitting there and saying that. I'm just saying that this story actually had a lot of what it is going for, and it did have a lot of time and effort into the story. So, okay. That's just what I have to say. So, what do I actually think of this story? Well, it's a pretty good story to put it bluntly and nicely. It's a really good story, and whoever wrote this did a really fantastic job with it. So, to the author, I really hope he or she, wrote pretty good stories just like this one. So, if you're hearing the wind, that's just the snowstorm. We're having like a snowstorm right now. It's blowing snow like crazy. So, yeah. What now? I'm going to sit there and say this right now that this is just my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas. This is simply my own personal thoughts. My final rating of this story is a 10 out of 10. Very believable. It had a lot of believability. I really do like how the grammar was good, the sentence structuring, the paragraph structuring, even the storyline of this. It's very believable, really well made, and it's very well detailed too. So that's actually a really good reason why I love this pasta, because it's actually one of the classic ones that did pretty good. And this was back before cliches became overused in that. So yeah. Well, anyways, with that being said, what did you guys think about this creepypasta? Did you all enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what would you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Leave me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section down below. I'm the Queen of Lions. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you happen to be brand new here on this channel, be sure to like, comment, subscribe because I make brand new videos every single day. Don't forget to ring the notification bell when I upload so then you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out of here and I'll be catching you all in the next video. So, as always, please roll the outro because I'm out.